Okay. Okay. So then just a word about the Black Alliance for Peace. The Black Alliance for Peace is a an organization. I think most people, everyone here I've seen before, so I'm not going to show this video just because it's about 5 minutes, and I think folks, we can share a link later. But the Black Alliance for Peace is an organization that has been around since 2017. It's focused on reigniting the Black radical peace tradition, and has what are called citywide alliances all across the U.S., as well as regional groupings of those citywide alliances and clusters. And they have member organizations as well. And they have a couple teams. One of them is the Haiti Americas team, which I'm on. Another one is the Africa team, which Frames is on. And so we participate in Black Alliance for Peace through those two teams. And the Haiti Americas team is the team that is working on this overall participation in the week of resistance. And so that's how we come to you today. Here, a lot of the information that we share will be the information that we work on as the Black Alliance for Peace, because it is a really great resource. And we can talk about at the end about how different ways that you can join it. People who identify as Black people obviously can join directly. There's also a solidarity network that is ways people can get involved there too. Ed is a member of the solidarity network. And so that's what I'll say about the Black Alliance for Peace. These are the demands of the Week of Resistance. So I don't know if anyone might be willing to come off mute and just kind of read the demands.
Stop the war on Venezuela. Do you want me to read them all or just
Yeah, read them all.
No to U.S. wars for regime change. Free President Maduro and Celia Flores. Defend Venezuela's sovereignty and right to resist.
We can keep going. There's a few more there.
I don't. Oh, okay. You know what? Okay.
That's all right. Anyone else want to jump in?
End the U.S. war on migrants, end the genocide in Palestine, and defeat Zionism, abolish ICE.
I say.
Sorry, it was hidden by pictures of us. Okay. Are there any questions about these demands?
Okay. Okay, can you hear me?
It's echoing again.
Turn the speaker and the mic off. Okay, can you hear me now? It's still got an echo. It was a little before we didn't have that challenge. Yeah, I think we were adding a problem. All right, y'all, if you would please just wait a moment while we deal with technical difficulties. We good? Okay, hold on. And it's open. Can you hear me?
Yes, the echo's gone.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, all right. Okay, so this we're just going to kick it over to Mr. Redwood just to talk a bit about the sanctions that are actually happening with Venezuela, and then and have some discussion.
Yeah, I just wanted to start off. A lot of people became more aware of Venezuela when the United States Armed Forces began bombing fishing boats, and discussion of those killings started to get out in the U.S. media. The war against Venezuela didn't start with these killings. The U.S. forces kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro represented a drastic, globally consequential escalation in a decade-long American campaign to pressure him out of power. A broadening net of sanctions was a central tool in this economic warfare. U.S. sanctions on Venezuela escalated for years before Maduro's capture on January 3rd. The U.S. wages economic warfare all over the globe. Economic warfare is sanctions. Economic warfare is trade restrictions. economic warfare is tariffs. And these types of economic warfare have been the main hidden weapons of war that are activated through presidential orders, State Department, and Treasury Department actions. During the Obama administration, there were 13 Venezuela-related sanctions. March 9th, 2015, President Obama imposed the initial sanctions on 7 Venezuelan leaders under a new executive order. Preparing for future sanctions, the order declares, quote, a national emergency with respect to the unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States posed by the situation in Venezuela, unquote. During the first Trump administration, there were 406 Venezuela-related sanctions. May 18th, the Trump administration began targeting Venezuelan leaders with sanctions, starting with 8 members of the court. In July 31st, the U.S. Treasury Department sanctioned Maduro along with other leaders. August 2017 to May 2018, Trump issued a series of executive orders targeting Venezuela, including a first that prohibited access to U.S. financial markets by the Venezuelan government, including state-owned energy company Petroleas de Venezuela, or PDVSA. Another prohibited transactions related to purchasing Venezuelan debt and any debt owned to Venezuela pledged as collateral. January 28, 2019, the Office of Foreign Assets Control designated the petroleum company of Venezuela, called it, quote, a primary source of Venezuela's income in foreign currency. The path to sanctions relief for PDVSA, Secretary Steve Mnuchin said in a statement, is through the expeditious transfer of control to the interim president or a subsequent democratically elected government. At the same time, the Trump administration announced that it would block all U.S. revenue to the Venezuelan oil company, a measure that's aimed primarily at Citgo, its U.S.-based subsidiary. Used to be a Citgo station on Center Avenue. Houston headquartered Citgo had long offered Venezuela an economic lifeline before and after U.S. sanctions took hold. In August, Trump issued executive order placing a comprehensive block on all property and interests in property of the government of Venezuela that are in the United States. The measure effectively banned U.S. individuals or companies from dealing with the Venezuelan government, its central bank, or the oil company. January 19th, Trump's last full day in office, his State Department sanctions 3 more individuals and 11 entities for their ties to the network helping Maduro. Biden administration, 51 Venezuela-related sanctions. November 3rd, Treasury Department sanctioned a boat called the Skipper for its alleged role in oil smuggling that benefited Hezbollah and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. January 10th, in one of its final sanctions actions, the Biden administration designated 8 Venezuelan officials, including the president of the Venezuelan oil company. The current Trump administration has already issued 51 Venezuela-related sanctions, and there's more. The State Department designated this Tren de Aragua as a foreign terrorist organization among 7 other groups. They announced they would terminate all the Biden-era concessions that allowed certain U.S. oil transactions in Venezuela to continue, though later the Trump administration granted Chevron a restricted license to operate. July 17th, the Treasury Department sanctioned the top leaders of Tren de Aragua, calling it an influential organization. There were sanctions placed on something called the Cartel de los Soles, which the U.S. described as a Venezuelan-based criminal group. The Venezuelan leaders, it said, provided material support to foreign terrorist organizations. August 7th, Pam Bondi announced a $50 million reward for information leading to Maduro's arrest, which doubled the $25 million reward that the Biden administration set earlier. The U.S. military, September 2nd, U.S. military killed 11 Venezuelans in the Caribbean Sea. Further U.S. boat strikes would kill more than 100 in the Caribbean and Pacific by the end of the year. November 24th, U.S. State Department designated this Cartel de los Soles as a foreign terrorist organization. Experts contend that the Cartel de los Soles is not an actual organization. The administration later dropped its characterization. December 5th, the White House released its national security strategy, which asserts that the United States must, quote, be preeminent in the Western Hemisphere as a condition of security and prosperity. It also went on to say, we want a hemisphere that remains free of hostile foreign incursion or ownership of key assets, and that supports critical supply chains. It's said in an apparent reference to China and Russia's influence in Latin America. December 10th, the U.S. seized the skipper boat in the Caribbean Sea off the coast of Venezuela while it was en route to China, and they escorted it into Galveston, Texas. December 11th, there was a flurry of sanctions, first targeting Maduro's nephews, Panamanian businessmen, 6 shipping companies, and 6 vessels. It says because they continue to provide resources to the Venezuelan government. December 16th, Trump announced a total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers entering or departing Venezuela. December 20th, U.S. forces intercepted and boarded a second tanker called Centuries that was carrying Venezuelan crude oil to Asia. The Panamanian flag vessel had not been targeted by U.S. sanctions before. December 31st, the Trump administration ended the year with one more Venezuela sanction blast, targeting 4 Chinese shipping companies and 4 vessels that it said were part of Venezuela's shadow fleet. January 3rd, U.S. forces captured Maduro in Caracas, then bring him to U.S. to face trial. Trump announced at a news conference that, quote, under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. And basically, that's the policy of the United States, is to have that total dominance over not just the Western Hemisphere, which is the focus of the current order, but really in other parts of the world as well. But we really didn't see the sanctions as they were proceeding president after president, but they were the prelude to the actual military war that we see now. And sometimes we don't react till we see the military war, but there's warfare going on all the time. In addition to the sanctions and tariffs and trade restrictions, there's also infiltration by the CIA and others internally in countries like Venezuela, particularly Venezuela, but it happens everywhere. It's a playbook that's been followed, was followed with Iran, it was followed with Russia, it was followed with Libya. It's been played out and it's been refined each time they do these economic warfare steps. But basically, that's what I wanted to raise mainly is economic warfare is the main warfare. And the thing that we really need to be concerned about, I believe, is that the longstanding economic warfare against Cuba is really setting up a new target right now. And the Venezuela, my view is the Venezuela activities are really targeted and aimed at Cuba.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. But yeah, so let's have a little talk. Thank you, Theron. You put a question in the chat. Does anyone have a link up to BA thorough explanation about Venezuela's government, like Carl is reading now? I've recently befriended a Venezuelan immigrant, and I want to educate myself. He's not a fan of Maduro and socialism. I want to be respectful of him, but armed with facts to gently challenge him. Yeah, that's definitely one of the issues, I think, in this, and I think it's also a challenge, even let's say with Iran, or where you have people who are from that country have a different view, and they are going to advance that one for sure. So,
yeah, I can share that information. I'll try to get it before we're off.
yeah.
But the information I'm reading is something that's not really a right wing kind of thing, but it's halfway right wing. That was just detailing what they've done over this period of time, and to really look at the sanctions as a crucial thing. And there's a bigger story around the sanctions on how particularly the United States government has been able to develop sanctions and trade restrictions and tariffs as weapons of war.
Yeah. And I'm going to share a few more resources too. I definitely recommend the Black Agenda Report, who's been covering Venezuela since its inception, just about as another place to go, Tehran.
all over.
Yeah.
It's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was very. Black Agenda Report is basically the organ of the Black on Streets. Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions or comments on anything Mr. Redwood shared? Yeah.
So one thing that stood out to me was, I feel like with propaganda and media, they make 47, that's what I call Trump, out to be like this boogeyman.
Mm-hmm.
But the history that Mr. Carl was reading, what we know is this not one president, this is the US.
Yeah.
As a whole.
Mm-hmm.
You name Biden, you name Trump, you name Obama, but I feel like that's what people are buying into. Like, oh, this is all Trump, this is all his people. No, this is the US.
Mm-hmm.
As a whole. This is just what they've been doing. And when you talk about the boats and the shipping, I thought of slavery.
Mm.
So it's like they keep telling us what they're gonna do, what they're gonna do. They might up the playbook, but it's always been there. It's just the US, not one particular administration.
Actually, yeah. Claire.
Yeah, so I wanted to make a couple of points. One is that, yes, I agree with Carl that what's behind us is Cuba, but the U.S. is also looking at. We also need to connect us with what's going on in Haiti. The U.S. wants to. Colombia is up for election in May, and the U.S. wants to ensure that they have a try to ensure that they have a right-wing government in Colombia. It also is trying to figure out, been talking about invading Mexico to deal with the quote drug cartels, the big drug cartels there. But obvious, all of this is to increase its hegemony in the Western Hemisphere, all of the Americans. But that doesn't mean the U.S. has forgotten about the rest of the world. My understanding from what I've been reading is they figure if they can get their what they consider their backyard in order, then it'll make them more powerful to confront China. Right now, they realize they can't confront China. The other thing I think that's important is to make the connections with Zionism and what's going on in Israel. I just read somewhere today or learned somewhere today that the oil company in Venezuela, the Venezuelans have agreed to allow foreign investment, and the major foreign investment is going to be this big Zionist billionaire. I'm sorry, I forget his name. He's going to be the biggest investor. Also, Venezuela has been a friend of the Palestinians, and Maria, the right wing in Venezuela has been very tied with the Zionists. So those were a couple points I wanted to make.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you might be talking about Paul Singer.
Yes, Paul Singer. You're right.
Yeah.
Paul Singer. Yes.
Yeah. 100%. Well, good. Yeah. Any other comments or questions that we can try to build this out? If not, we'll keep going. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to talk a little bit about how about this whole question around what is this, what might be behind this, right? So hold on one second here. Wait, this is the wrong one. Sorry, y'all. So one of the things that's I think important to talk about in this whole case is that you have the U.S., but then exactly who is the U.S., right? What is the U.S.? The U.S. that's the name of the state, but what is the actual, who might be behind even this term, the U.S.? So we're going to talk a little bit about the corporate elements here and potential targets if we were going to organize about this, and also maybe talk about the way that, one of the things from like a socialist perspective, might also be to look at like, well, what are the class dimensions, So we want to kind of maybe talk about that a little bit, but we're going to mainly focus on the corporate piece of this. So just to continue, thanks, Mr. Redwood, for that, that really appreciate that. So here is this one question about what does Venezuela represent and who does it threaten? Oh, wait. Oh, you just want us to be able to see the question? Is that you doing that or me?
Yeah, I'm trying to type in the link to the.
Oh, bad. Okay, cool. Okay, good. Yeah, I can see my screen here, so it's good. So you're going to see here a bunch of corporations. Anyone want to shout these corporations out? Someone who hasn't spoken?
Bank of America.
There we go. There's one. What else do we see?
BlackRock.
Yeah. Come on, y'all, rescue me. Kellogg's, bet, exactly.
Chevron up there.
Chevron,
Exxon.
Exxon, yep. Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about, maybe why Venezuela is a threat, right? So a bit about this idea of this phrase Chavismo. So Chavismo is a term people use for the framework and the practice and the socialism that Hugo Chavez brought, which he called 20th century or 21st century socialism was one of the terms, I believe. But also how he tried to use oil to build national liberation, a zone of peace and socialism. And so there's a couple quotes here that I just took from a recent Black Agenda Report article that does give you some more information. That person there, Dan Kovalik, I think it was Theron asked that question. He has a whole book on this war. Oh, Dan Kovalik's from here. Wow. See, yeah, I didn't know that. So, so that's one place to go, Theron, is to go look up this interview and then go get his book because it's all about this war. Anyone willing to read this? I'll read the first paragraph and someone come and read the second one. So, PetroCaribe was a Venezuelan-led oil alliance for Caribbean and Central American nations. It provided fuel to poorer countries in the region, such as Haiti and Cuba, at little to no cost. At one time, under the leadership of Hugo Chavez, it provided cheap fuel to low-income Americans through Venezuela's U.S. subsidiary, Citgo, as a humanitarian effort. So in the South, when people were having trouble paying some of their own heating bills, Venezuela was actually supporting people here, which of course is a lot of Black people. And so that was one of the early initiatives and part of the vision about building a zone of peace. One of the agendas of the Black Alliance for Peace is to see our Americas, that's from Canada all the way down to the bottom of South America, as our Americas. And particularly Maurice Bishop and others had a vision really for the Caribbean and South America as our Americas, and to see that as one region. And so you can see in Hugo Chavez's work that he was trying to make connections across the Americas and the Caribbean, and to try to get to be able to have independence through using the oil as a strategy of nationalism. He actually didn't start calling it socialism until about 2006. In the beginning, it was just kind of Chavismo, but then later on he comes out and he names it as socialism. So does someone else want to read the second paragraph here?
I will.
Yeah.
ALBA was a regional alliance dedicated to the alleviation of poverty and suffering of the most oppressed peoples in the Americas. It succeeded in eliminating poverty for 11 million people in 5 years from its inception. In addition, it increased literacy rates, reduced infant mortality, and established medical schools to train healthcare workers.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is one of the things that was a threat, and Chavez, was the president until he passed unexpectedly in 2013. But they began almost immediately with the sanctions Mr. Redwood talked about. So those sanctions go back at least to 2005. What was your earliest sanction?
Just from Obama, 2015.
Yeah, but there's sanctions even before then, right? Yep, they go back to
Just on Maduro.
right, Maduro sanctions. Yeah, they go back to 2005. They were coming after them because of this issue of mainly nationalization. So one of the things that Chavez does in 2007 is he nationalizes the oil. And by nationalizing the oil, what was meant was that you had to agree, if you were a corporation there, that up to that at minimum 60% was going to be owned by Venezuela. or maybe let's just say 60% was going to be owned by Venezuela. They were going to own the majority. There was going to be limits on the amount of revenues that you could take out, right? They were going to basically charge you and it sounds a lot like tariffs because that's essentially what this is. Tariffs are a strategy of nationalization. Trump is a white nationalist, so he uses this strategy as well. But when Venezuela was doing it, it was a big problem because in nationalizing the oil, it meant that there was going to be reduced profits for companies like Exxon and Citgo and Chevron. Chevron actually decided to stay. Exxon left and sued. And Citgo actually was the company owned by Venezuela. So Citgo was like the American subsidiary of the Venezuela state-owned oil company. So Chavez was really moving, and Maduro is, was his right-hand person. So I'll just pause there and see if anyone has any questions or comments about this. Definitely recommend reading this interview. It's a good one, and it's recent. So staying on this same theme, anybody? Yeah, please.
That is one thing to add. Back at that time when Citgo was still operating, there were anti-imperialist folks who were encouraging us to buy gas from Citgo as a way to support Venezuela.
Nice.
And there was that station that's across from where CVS is on Center Avenue.
Yes.
But
that's crazy. Citgo was in the Hill.
Not on the Hill, down towards.
Where?
By CVS.
Oh, where?
The Oakland Little Park.
Oh,
Craig Street.
Oh, Craig, where now there's a Sunoco there now, I think.
It's an auto fix-up auto shop.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever. Anyway, that's nice.
Low-key. Yeah, that's low-key still the Hill because it's like one.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
This Center and Craig is this low-key Hill.
There used to be a Giant Eagle there too, but.
What's what I would say? There's a dispute. There's a dispute among the hillbillies. I'm gonna step out and let them handle that. Okay, Bet, you work there. Sweet. What do you say? Is that the Hill or no?
I mean, it's close.
It's close, right?
Yeah, it's right. It's right
It's
there.
right there. Okay, Bet. Okay, so so that was. Thank you for that. That's great history on that. So will someone else come in and read these other pieces around Chavismo? Okay, Bet.
And that oil wealth to prioritize the poor majority.
Yeah. He underwrote social programs. He was taking oil out and then using it to underwrite social programs.
When you said that earlier, what stuck out to me, just trying to connect it with like local or not local, but US stuff, that's how they cut social programs.
Yeah.
Like every year.
Right.
But when, Obama and Trump down here, they really cut.
Yeah.
Social programs.
Oh, it's hard to hear Fawn there saying. Let me sit over here. If you sit,
This is the only mic going right now.
this is the only mic? Okay, we'll sit here. Yeah. You want to sit here? Okay, Bet.
I was just saying that we were talking about cutting the programs that were helping people in Venezuela. Well, not just Venezuela, but a lot of places. I was just tying that back to how they do that here when they cut the programs and things that are actually working here.
Yeah, I say. Want someone to take the second bullet? Someone we haven't heard from? Ms. Regina, you gonna go?
Is this now, am I reading the correct part, everyone? We're on the page that it describes the threat of Chavismo. Am I on the right place?
Yep, and it says launched in 2003 is the next one.
Okay, launched in 2003, known as Misiones Bolivarianas, to deliver services directly to impoverished neighborhoods, established thousands of free medical clinics, many staffed by Cuban doctors, provided an exchange for discounted Venezuelan oil.
Yeah.
Created a state-run network of thousands of supermarkets and soup kitchens that sold food at heavily subsidized prices, often 40% below market rates. Ooh, that sounds like that was a no-no.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely, right. And so you see there this combination of nationalism and socialism, and that he's trying to use these resources to benefit the people there, and that these things got the nationalization of the oil first got the issue, which has been an issue in other coups that the U.S. has led, right? So similar strategies have been tried in many other places. Iran in 1953 started to work on nationalization. People try to get their own resources. And again, I liken it also to Black nationalists. People who start to say, like, this should be for us and we should share broadly, not as Black capitalists, but as Black socialists, Black radicals, and have strategies to build power collectively, are going to get framed as all kinds of things, authoritarians, extreme, etc., because that's a threat to capital class and embodied in these corporations. Any other comments or questions, or who can add on? Like, if you have other information to share about Venezuela's socialist program, please share it. Okay, well, we'll keep going. And here's the last two. So Chavez also launched massive literacy campaigns and offered free adult education and vocational training. And he and Maduro have focused on constructing low-income housing, building over 5 million affordable housing units, even in the face of brutal U.S. sanctions. So Maduro, when he takes over, even in the face of these crippling sanctions, he's still trying to build and do things for the public, and builds over 5 million housing units. Mr. Redwood, how many housing units is Pittsburgh short? How many housing? What's our housing shortage here?
They were saying 20,000.
Right. Yeah. There's 20. Like, we don't even have the 20,000 in this city, right? Yeah. That's just the city. That's not even the county or other municipalities, right? Yeah. So again, that becomes a real threat. But here's the challenge, right? The current situation, and this is from that Instagram account I recommended. Theron, did you already follow them?
I don't think so. So I'm adding that now. Yeah.
Okay, but yeah. So this is unfortunately the Rodriguez, who's the current president, interim president, acting president. They're so jammed up that they have to take some things because the pressure is getting so high. They lost 7 million people between 2015 and 2023 in terms of just leaving the country. A lot of the skilled workers left. That's something that you need. You need to build that class of people who can help to provide medical and administration, teaching, etc. Lost a lot of people because of those sanctions. Of course, they'll say it wasn't the sanctions. They're going to say it's mismanagement. So that's the thing that's what they're going to always claim, that the sanctions had almost no impact, and yet they're effective. That's an argument that doesn't really work, that they both have had no negative impact and they're effective, but they do say both things. So now what's happened, anyone want to jump in and just read that quote?
Oh, before that quote, this is Claire. So
Yeah.
it's not only the sanctions. My understanding was the U.S. convinced the Middle Eastern oil nations like Saudi Arabia and stuff to release more oil into the market to force the price down of oils. So that was another problem, because when Chavez came in, the price of oil was much higher. So the U.S., between releasing more oil, because you can control the price of oil by how much you release out onto the market. And so that was
recently, Claire, or is that before?
No, that was back when Maduro first came in office.
Oh, yeah.
My understanding.
Yeah, the oil crashed too. I don't even know how much. I'm curious about that, because definitely there was it had its.
Yeah, but my understanding was that crash wasn't just out of the blue. That
Okay.
The United States helped to orchestrate
Engineer
that.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, word, yeah. Well, that did cause a big problem because the price dropped crazy. Yep.
Yeah.
2014, 2015. Yep.
Yeah.
So this is the current thing, is that that they have now done this hydrocarbon reform, which is offering expanded benefits for foreign capital, including the return of international arbitration. That means that these corporations can take their issues around nationalization of resources and other claims that they make. They can have more control over operations and sales. And that's happened since the bombing of January 3rd. So that's why that's the situation currently. And that's why Trump is like, oh, we're working with Rodriguez and things are going okay, because they're really jammed. And I think they're getting pressure from both sides. They're getting pressure from Machado and her group of folks, and then they're getting pressure from the U.S. and they're trying to figure out how to survive. And I think this gets to the challenge of what Mr. Redwood said earlier, which is then the target becomes also, or maybe primarily Cuba, or maybe even in the long term China, because it's hard to have socialism without a lot of socialism. It's because the capitalists are going to converge on you and try to take you out. Any questions or comments here? Thought to add before we keep going?
It kind of seems like there, like, an undercurrent that I've been seeing, like, just like nationally and internationally, is that it's like, I don't know, it's like a Cold War and a world war all at once. And like the current world war is quite literally like the international struggle of socialism or anti-capitalism or alternatives to capitalism versus capitalist authoritarian states. Like that seems to kind of be, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and another take might even be, just to put aside that one, is that capitalism is ongoing a variety of class wars, like so-called first world nations against the global South, white settler capital classes against the people of oppressed nations, and then even their own white settler people in their own group. Maybe there's some tension there, but then there's a lot of various kinds of class struggles. And so I would just add that to what you said, Tyra. Okay, so this is a note here on the yeah, but maybe they can't even see it. Do y'all see the screen fully, or do you see something else? Okay, bet. So yeah, this is really important because Citgo was a really important strategy of Venezuela. It was the way in which they were able to make sell the oil in the U.S. It was owned by PDVSA, which is the state-owned oil company. Again, kind of like how socialists might use their state. They were taking those resources from PDVSA, which was the state-owned oil company, which had nationalized the oil, and they were using that for some of those social programs that were being discussed. But it was targeted as something that could pay all these debts that Venezuela has amassed billions of debt, because the sanctions that Mr. Redwood was talking about caused massive amounts of debt, because as they were cutting off every kind of money that Venezuela would get, they would have to then do things like underwrite things with oil because they had no cash, right? So, and the U.S. was doing everything they could to stop any cash getting to Venezuela. Venezuela would work around it and mine its own gold and sell gold on the market, and the U.S. would ban anyone from buying their gold. So eventually Citgo, they're now breaking it apart, and it's in front of the U.S. Treasury as to whether this guy, Paul Singer, who's a massive Zionist and supporter of Israel, will be able to buy this company, he'll buy it for like $6 billion, but it's valued at like $12 billion. He's going to get this maybe for like 50 cents on the dollar. Okay. So here's just a few corporate actors benefiting from the war on Venezuela, and I'm just going to run through these quick. But I would love it if y'all would. Yeah, please.
Can I? Sorry, it's Sabrina. Can I ask a question before you move on from Zionism?
Yeah.
I'm interested in any thoughts or analysis regarding Iran and how it affects how the thought process might be for the United States in using Venezuelan oil in case things proceed with Iran and they shut the Strait of Hormuz. Or I know that there's been talk about Venezuelan oil being harder to process. So I was just wondering if anyone else had any thoughts on that or confirmed information.
Yeah, I have one thought on it, but I'm going to leave it, see if anyone else has any other thoughts. Do you have any thoughts, Mr. Redwood or Fawn, anyone on the chat, on the Zoom?
Well, this is Claire. A little known fact, the U.S. is actually the biggest, I think the U.S. is actually the biggest producer of oil at this time in the world. Mm-hmm. So, so I'm not so, I think the rest of the world will suffer more from the closing of the Strait of Hormuz than the U.S. will.
Yeah. Another little known fact, one of the reasons that the U.S. is the biggest oil producer in the world now is because of something that's right in our own backyard, which is shale. Marcellus Shale, and other shale. Natural gas is what's elevated the U.S. One other fact I'll add, Sabrina, but I think it's a point of learning, and I want to learn more about myself as well, is that the day after January 3rd, one of the high up Israel, the opposition candidate for Netanyahu, said, Iran, you'd be well to learn from this. So Israel is definitely using this to try to say, to foment concern that like there, but for the grace of God goes you.
Right. Yep.
So that's all I have on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any more to add yourself?
No,
Okay.
no, it's just curious. I just heard like here and there, but not in-depth analysis about it. And I just was wondering if anyone else had anything else to add.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, point of learning for me too. So here's this here, and again, I hope this doesn't annoy people, but I just like to get tired of hearing my own voice. So I'll read one, maybe someone else might jump in one, but these are corporate actors, but behind the corporate actors are people, right? But one thing that I'll just go back to and say, one of the things that's hard, I think, about doing class analysis, I absolutely appreciate the question, Sabrina. One thing I think that's harder about doing class, which I like about having Paul Singer here, and going back to this, I'm going to go back to this here. This makes it a little bit hard to do class analysis, I find for myself personally, just speaking for myself, because a lot of times now, the people who own Exxon and who own Chevron is actually BlackRock and Vanguard. They are owned by institutions themselves. And so then you have to get in, then if you ask who owns Vanguard, Vanguard will say, we're owned by the people that we invest our own other funds. It's like it almost feels like it's intentionally trying to make it very unclear. Like they learned from the era of like the robber barons, of like the Rockefellers and Carnegies, where you could just point them out. It seems a little bit more complex to me to try to do like the class analysis of this, because they're all behind these facades of these corporations, and behind the corporations are more corporations. And then they make corporations people, which just makes it even, a bit more challenging. But we can at least get closer. So I'll just go to this here. So Chevron has been there for 100 plus years. So Chevron could be something that a group that we try to understand better. They have licenses that they're the only U.S. company that can get oil out of Venezuela. They got special licenses to do that, which shows, I think, that they're in partnership with all those sanctions Mr. Redwood said, because they're benefiting from them, because they are able even to get oil out and trade it for debt that Venezuela owes them. I would imagine they get a better rate on that debt. And also they own a third of another company, which is off of the coast of Guyana, called the Essequibo Territory. Venezuela actually has said that's their land and their coast for 100 years. But Spain, the British mapping people, whatever that's called, like mapped a section that traditionally has been Spain's as Britain's. And then then Britain just handed it over and made it a part of their own thing. And it was like a little bit of a skirmish, but Guyana has it now. It's going to allow Guyana to have the most oil per capita in the world. But Maduro was fighting that. So that if you had a company that was off the coast, you would not want Maduro, because Maduro is fighting to get a hold of that. So that's just, and Exxon has a piece of that too. Another note about this is that Chevron just bought Hess Oil last year or 2 years ago. John Hess was the inheritor of it. He just gave $1 million to MAGA in December. And that gave the company that when Hess owned a section of that company that was off the coast of Guyana, Chevron bought it. Exxon tried to stop them from buying it because Exxon did not want Chevron to have even more authority in that area, but Chevron was able to. Someone just put something in the chat. I'm not sure what that is. Anyone else want to read these bottom two company things?
I'll do it.
Yeah.
Leading shareholder in joint venture off of, can someone help me with that pronunciation?
Esquivo.
Thank you. Territory fought Chevron for a year to prevent it from purchasing Hess Oil, which held the 1/3 of the venture. John Hess Jr. joined Chevron's board and gave $1 million to MAGA Incorporated in December.
Yeah.
In December of 2025, Halliburton sued Venezuela for money it lost due to sanctions and instability. A more compromised Venezuelan government could be forced to pay or settle. And then lastly, Kellogg Latin American Holding Company, a subsidiary of Kellogg Food, itself a funder of the W.K. Kellogg Trust and a funder of the Kellogg Foundation, is also suing Venezuela for losses it claims is due to nationalization and use of trademarks.
Yeah. So those are just some actors that you could get to behind. Behind them, they have boards, they have people, they have locations. Interestingly enough, we were thinking about maybe doing an action at Chevron, went out there to look at the Chevron site, which is out in Moon Township, and they're actually in a building that is labeled as civil and environmental consultants. Of ironies, right? That the oil company doing mining is actually in a building that's for oil, that says it's for civil and environmental consultants, but Chevron doesn't put their name on that building. For whatever reason. Any thoughts about anything here? Anyone have any questions or comments or thoughts about this?
I do about Chevron. BDS also has a national campaign against Chevron regarding genocide, apartheid, and climate disaster.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, I was looking here just to see if it had mentioned anything about Venezuela in regards to this boycott, but I think it's primarily, the Gaza connection.
Yeah, because Chevron owns right off the coast of Israel, right? They are right?
Yes.
Yep. And Chevron has leaking pipes and oil right off in Nigeria as well.
Yeah. And this is Claire. There might be stuff with Halliburton. I'm not sure. I don't know what Dick Cheney, who was George Bush II's vice president, he was the CEO of Halliburton, and Halliburton played a big role in sending all these mercenaries into Iraq and the Middle East. U.S. people think of the U.S. as just sending the military, but they also use a lot of these private mercenary groups, and Halliburton played a big role in that.
Yeah, I say 100%. I mean, yeah, exactly. They would have, in some ways, like the playbook, like they did this before, and they would know something about this again. Yeah. Yeah, please, Theron. Am I saying your name properly?
Yeah, Theron. That's kind of interesting what you said, Justin, that so National DSA, one of the anti-imperialism working groups, was having a Chevron targeted campaign recently, and we tried to look locally to see if there was something around here, and I had heard someone say something about Moon Township, but we couldn't find it, so they're doing a good job of masking their presence.
Yeah, it says 700 something drive. If you look it up, then you go out to 700 something drive and you don't see anything but civil and environmental consultants. And there's they have signs in the parking lot which say, if you're not here for a meeting, you can't be here. You're not supposed to be here. You have to be invited even to be in their parking lot. So they're very worried about something. It seems to me that they're worried that you have to police your parking lot. I've never seen that before. Okay. So I just had maybe it was one more thought, if someone might read this, but what might be the essence of the war on Venezuela? Mr. Redwood and I have different thoughts, but they're compatible thoughts. They're compatible thoughts. But I would say there's another element maybe that someone has put out recently that I thought is a useful thought to put behind what's maybe motivating this war. And I'm just would love if someone would be willing to read this.
I can read it.
Okay, yeah, let him read it, please. Because I was
Okay. And we'll start at fossil fuels here.
Yeah.
Fossil fuels have historically served as the lifeblood of monopoly capital. Their high energy density, scalability, and compatibility with large-scale industrial systems have made them indispensable to capital's relentless drive for accumulation. To abandon this model would not simply mean an ecological pivot. It would entail a structural slowdown in profit cycles, a delay in capital turnover, and potentially a strategic retreat in the zero-sum logic of global competition. In short, for imperial capital, clinging to fossil fuels is not just about energy. It is about preserving geopolitical dominance and the very architecture of monopoly power, regardless of the ecological collapse that this spells for all life on the planet.
Yeah. This is in the most recent monthly review titled is The Shale Revolution, U.S. Energy Imperialism, Mexico's Dependence. They're focusing on Mexico, but the article, I think, does kind of do a good job of maybe raising that, like that the fossil fuel element of the capital class is in some ways also fighting to extend their relevance. Because some people would argue that you could replace fossil fuels with renewables by like 2030, 2035. But if you fight to make oil central, you could extend it out to 2050, which of course would have huge impacts on the planet. So the war in Venezuela is also maybe, I think what's being offered here is not just for Venezuela and not just for now, but it's also to maintain a certain structure of how energy is used. So it's really important. Yeah, so we'll stop. Oh yeah, please, Mr. Redwood.
Yeah, I checked out this other article I just saw,
Yeah,
but it talks about alternative energy like solar and wind.
yeah,
But one of the things they say in the article, Alt-E, that's what they call it, requires oil for its production. Solar panels, wind turbines, and hydro dams are heavily dependent on oil to manufacture machinery, operate equipment, and dispose of used products. Thus, oil is not separate from Alt-E. They're both sketches in the bigger picture of energy production. So I hadn't thought about that before, but that's an interesting thing as well.
yeah. I mean, I think I appreciate that too, because it basically says like, this is not going to be some neat switch, right? Yeah. I'd have to look at that more, but yeah, so thanks. Any other thoughts? I just want to close and just say like, here is you can join the Black Alliance for Peace and the US Out of the Americas Network. Also folks who I think everybody here probably already knows, but we have our own study group every Thursdays. And I'll just, leave it open for any more discussion that folks have or comments or questions before we go to Cop City.
I was just going to add that some of this is connected to the data centers. We're starting to look at, there's a lot of data centers popping up throughout the US and BlackRock owns some of them. But when you go to, they're not there. But a lot of the data centers are hidden and they're using a massive amount of water, massive amount of energy, from Black communities and rural communities as well. So they're very hidden, but they're there. So this tie with like corporations like BlackRock and Exxon is definitely tied, and Chevron is definitely tied to these data centers.
Yeah, frames, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate what you just offered, Fawn, as well. And I think just as related, I think something that is standing out to me, and appreciate all the way the information's been packaged. I feel like I think of the IMF comes to mind a lot, and Walter Rodney and how Europe underdeveloped Africa, and just thinking, I think Carl, you were making a comment about economic warfare, like to open us up today. And I think it's really striking how similar the same mechanism like manifests in such similar ways at different scales, right? So we can see it in the data centers in our own neighborhoods. We can see it in Venezuela. We can see it with the way the IMF economically exploits so-called underdeveloped nation or so-called developing nations, but really we should call them underdeveloped nations, and exploits them to serve capitalist purposes, right? And so when we're critical of governments and we're critical of the ruling class and we're critical of these, it's important to name these corporations because it's the same class of people that govern us, that are involved in making these decisions.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. You gonna say something, Eric?
Yeah, this is a little topic adjacent, but since we're talking about oil, there's another place I learned about that the Energy Transfer Partners, who are the main like oil companies involved with the Dakota Access Pipeline, has a processing center in Pittsburgh, right near the Highland. I believe it's the Highland Park Bridge that goes over the river. Like if you're going over to Freeport Road, it's like it's just like industry. Like if you're driving down that road that goes cuts through Lawrenceville, it's like giant. I'm like, what were they doing? What are they doing there? But it's like processing oil. I always thought that might be a target.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it'd be good. Yeah, 'cause you look into it, and then what does it, where does it lead you?
Well, I did brief reading about how much, who owns the oil and the Dakota Access Pipeline, and they were like
Yeah.
the highest one.
Yeah. That's deep. Yeah. Appreciate that.
Bunch of Sunoco trucks there too.
Oh, wow. See, yeah, I see. Because I think it would be helpful, if we can figure out like a Pittsburgh and Western PA and make more connections so that we can actually see what's really happening directly in these 10 counties or whatever. It would help us, I think, understand even local power works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to kick it over to Fawn. And we're going to talk about Cop City, and then we're gonna wrap. So appreciate everybody's patience. Oh, snap, sorry. Hold on. Wait, let me stop share. Do it again. Of course. I'm sorry, y'all. Like, I want to ask someone, does anyone have a chant? Okay, hold on. I think we got it here. Hold on. There we go.
Make it any bigger for me?
Yeah, let's see.
I'll just pinch it.
No, yeah, let's see if we can do. Let me get rid of this. And then there we go.
Okay. And I just go down.
You scroll down like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yep.
There we go.
Yes. All right. So we're not going to shift the conversation to talk about cop cities. And I didn't just want to go jump right into the Pittsburgh one. I kind of wanted to go over some of the history of what they are. So cop cities are large-scale police training facilities that are situated throughout the U.S. There's the way that they describe them is they're designed to provide comprehensive training for police and use advanced technology and tactics. So as of today, like January 2026, there are over 80 being proposed and developed or finished. So some people, there's like discussion and dispute about what is a cop city. But the way that I see it is cop cities perpetuate a police state. So any facility that trains police officers, that trains the military is a cop city. And that's traditionally how people in the movement have seen it. So there's dispute about the number. Some say 69, some say 80. But it's any facility where police are being trained and they're using this advanced technology and these advanced tactics. So it's important to recognize that when you talk about cop cities. So the history of cop cities kind of goes back to Atlanta with the uprisings of 2020. So the uprisings were everywhere. They hit everywhere in the US. And around that time, community movement builders, as well as other people in Atlanta, were organizing around the murder of Rashad Brooks. So while that was happening, the Black politicians of Atlanta started to plan a $90 million police training facility to be built across 381 acres of the forest. And I don't want to mispronounce it, but I think it's called the Willani Forest, which is, of course, stolen land. So with the forest piece coming in, that's where you've seen a lot of environmental organizers getting involved. And for a while, that was, I would say, the face of the Cop City movement. You really had to do your digging and your research to see that this had started way back. I mean, even before 2020, this playbook had started to come in play. So with the Atlanta, every time you talk about Cop City, you want to bring up Tortilla. I always mispronounce their name, but they were killed. There were forest defender that were killed by Atlanta police. Tortuguita, yes, was a forest defender that was killed by the police in Atlanta. So during the uprisings and all these things are going on, these politicians are planning this $90 million police training facility that was proposed to have a mock city. Oh, did somebody say something?
I think she's trying to tweet this. It's a question of our Spanish is probably,
Yeah,
no one's
probably
Spanish is gonna be that great.
yeah.
Yeah, but however that GU is in there. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Things I gotta learn. What's that?
Oh, I don't think so.
Nah.
So like I said, at the time when it was being proposed, it was supposed to have a mock city to practice urban warfare, tear gas, and explosive testing, dozens of shooting ranges, and a Black Hawk helicopter landing pad. And actually, they did end up building the Cop City, but the fight continues because, like I said, now we have over 65 that have emerged throughout the U.S. Like you said, just
Let's scroll.
set it down like this.
Other way. I think you're going to go up.
Oh, okay.
No, there it is. Let's go. There you go.
So we have a lot of Cop cities here in Pennsylvania that people may not know about. We have one in Hershey that is in progress. The ground has already been broken on that. And that's a $387 million expansion of the Pennsylvania State Police Training Facility. And it's set to be completed by 2028. In Philadelphia, there is one proposed for $32.5 million. And of course, we have one in Pittsburgh. So this here is a map, and I'll put all these resources in the chat, but there's a group called Is Your Life Better, and they track all the Cop cities that are being built. So this here is a map, and then I'll kind of read out what the, so the yellow stands for no known projects. Green is in planning and assessment phase. Orange is approved for construction. Red is under construction. Blue, the facility is open. And then purple is there's multiple phases. So like I said, I'll make sure to put that in the chat, but I wanted to give you all like a map of what is going on with these Cop cities. They're literally popping up throughout the US. It's even hard to keep track of them. So that's why this map was started. And like I said, it's a group called Is Your Life Better? And this is a picture of the Pittsburgh site that they've already approved. This is the old VA site in Lincoln, Leamington area. That was the best picture that I could find. Just kind of show you all an example of the amount of land that they're working with. And of course, you see forests, you see trees. So the Cop City, it ties into Venezuela, fascism and imperialism. So it's a local example of how fascism and imperialism shows up right here in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. So the Pittsburgh one is already approved for 1.8 million with an estimated cost of $86 million. It's a 168-acre site. It's going to be for fire, police, and EMS. They're calling this a public safety center hub. So like I said, it's going to be in a Lincoln Leamington area, which is, of course, a Black community. It's going to have K-9 training facility, a firing range, training classrooms, emergency vehicle operation course, evidence warehouse, fire burn tower, indoor pool, training driving course, and salt and water weather equipment stores. So it's going to have all of these pieces in there.
There's a question I can ask is, what was all that activism about? I thought it got stopped or halted or something.
No, it did not. It did not. They did bring up some amendments, which I'm going to talk about, but no, it did not get stopped. It got approved, and they pushed it through. So all of our wonderful progressive politicians that we have here in Pittsburgh, this thing just ran right through.
Now they approved the plan, right? They approved 1.8 million to create a plan.
Yeah.
Do they also approve the 80 some that's going to follow?
That's the estimated cost that
Yeah.
is to follow. So they approved that 1.8 million to start with the
Planning.
part with the planning.
Okay.
Yeah.
But have they approved the full site yet or all
Yes,
that?
that's
Oh,
what they're using the site for.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. So all of that has been approved.
Yep. And there's one other note there too, right? Like
Mhm.
that they got it for $1, but did the federal government say you only can get this if you're willing to use it for so-called public safety, or could they have used it for anything they wanted?
They could use anything they wanted. So they
Oh.
got it in 2018,
Okay.
but they didn't say anything.
Uh-huh.
So they held on to it since 2018. And if you ask them, they'll say, well, we have to use it, or the government's going to use it for
Take
what
it
they
back.
want to use it
Okay.
to.
Mhm.
So they told them it had to be used for some kind of public safety.
Okay. The public
So-
safety. So federal
Some
government gave these stipulations on
And there's no clarity on, did they say that in 2018 or
No.
did they say that recently?
recently.
But they've had it since 2018.
Got it.
But they're saying if they didn't use it in 2025, then they
They're
were
gonna
going to lose it. So, and it's tied to fascism, and you have to understand like the definition of fascism. So that's when a ruling class or government is led by a dictator, and they use that to suppress oppression, emphasizes being militarism, and involves like the nation over the individual. And imperialism involves exercising power when using capitalism. So they both result in a ruling class, getting more resources and the use of propaganda to get support for their violent tactics. So in Venezuela, we've seen the U.S. kidnap the president and their wife, of course, leaving the country in turmoil. And they did that by claiming, okay, no, we're going there for drug trafficking. We're going there for terrorism, you all. So we have to do this because it's so dangerous. So people started to believe that. Can't get the
Move
thing.
up. I think that's clear.
Go ahead, Dr. Cohen.
Yeah, a couple things I wanted to add was one, a lot of their training and a lot of the resources they're getting are military stuff.
Mhm.
And what people don't understand, the military is supposed to be fighting, quote, theoretically, an outward enemy, not its own citizens. But these police are being trained in techniques. You're seeing some of this going on now in Minnesota. They're being trained in techniques of fighting as if people in this country are the enemy. And also, a lot of the equipment they're getting is equipment from the military, I guess they call it leftover equipment from the military. The other troubling thing is a lot of these groups are training with the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, and they train with them to learn. A lot of people, if you listen to I forgot his name, this Australian guy, and he called the Palestine Laboratory. This IDF actually advertises that it has battle tested certain techniques and certain equipment on the Palestinians. So we have these people go over there and they learn that they learn some the techniques. One of the ones that they've learned is how you saw when they shot both Renee Good and this other guy Petty. They wouldn't let anybody come to rescue them until they died. So they wouldn't let emergency responders come. They just sat there and let them die, and that's a typical technique that the IDF uses. But a lot of that stuff is going to be used on all of us now. That's what people need to realize.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of it already has been used on a lot of us. Our police here in Pittsburgh have gone to Israel and worked with them in the past. That it's common, actually. I know some police departments in the Mon Valley have as well. So in the beginning, I kind of talked about the uprisings of 2020. I was one of the people that was directly involved in that. So I noticed within like 4 months of being into that they were trained by somebody because they came back with completely different methods. They came back during different formations. They were using tear gas on us, rubber bullets. I was like, oh, so they've gone to be trained. And that's literally what they're going to do with these cop cities. This training for how to kill us better, how to kill us more. So thank you for pointing that out, Dr. Cohen, as well as some of the propaganda that they're using. So they use this propaganda with the Venezuela in regards to, oh, we're going after drug traffickers and we're going after terrorism. But this is a playbook that had been planted for a while. So 47, that's what I call Trump. He actually owns a property in Palm Beach, Florida, and that's an area that houses a lot of Venezuelan Americans. It's called Mar-a-Lago, also known as Southern White House or the Winter White House, because Trump is there a lot throughout the year, and he also has a lot of international guests that he hosts there at this facility. Once again, goes back to imperialism and it goes back to capitalism, right? Because he's buying property in these areas. And he's even convinced some of these folks that he's on their side. That's why you see, Venezuelans for Trump. So this started in his first presidency. So these things have already been being planted. And then with Cop City, you see the propaganda. So, we're reimagining public safety, you all, which is just a safe word instead of saying defunding. So they hijacked that word from us and said, let's reimagine.
Oh, right.
Let's reimagine.
Yeah.
So when they talk about this public safety center, they don't call it a cop city. We call it a cop city because we know what it is. They say, no, we are responding to the uprisings of 2020 because we're reimagining public safety. And this facility is going to be for everyone. They also put in the community violence, especially in the Black communities, because it's in Lincoln Leamington, right? So some of the arguments I've had with my own people have been, no, Fawn, we need this. It is not safe in our communities. We need more police. Right. So that goes back to that propaganda. Also, it comes up with even the money. So, they just cut some Stop the Violence funds, right? So people protested, they showed up. No, we need these funds. Yeah, we need these funds so we can have this public safety center and we can continue to address violence. It is so bad in these communities. So we need more police. Yeah. And people have started to kind of buy into that, really started to believe some of that. Yeah. But I wanted to point out that propaganda, and you see how it's being used in Venezuela, how it's being used with Cop City. Another piece is the amendments that create false relief, but history and international lens tells us different. So they have these amendments, which I guess was their way to responding to us. Right. And the amendments say that the facility will not be used to stop federal law enforcement agencies, foreign militaries, or industrial service, or law enforcement in general for urban warfare occupying cities. That's bullcrap. We have a president who is a convicted felon. We have a president who has funded ICE to the point he makes it the largest law enforcement funded in the U.S., and he's using it to occupy cities. So he will do what he wants to do if this facility is built, regardless of any amendments that they kind of try to throw in their face. So please.
One thing I was going to say, though, just to give you and the other organizers who've been working on this is you can't look this up, though, without Cop City being in the words.
Yeah, that's good.
Like it's messed them up. Like it's the press is reporting it. I think it's to shout out to show you can interrupt narratives because even locally they are repeating it. They're like controversially called Cop City. It's and it's not like it's been a massive. It's interjected and locally they've picked it up and it's I just think it's an example of people winning because that's not what the city of police wants that place to be referred to.
That's a great point. Yes, that's a great point. Yes. That's helpful because when I look it up, it comes up.
Yeah, it's what they saw. That's what they're
calling it. Yeah. Another piece that what does he say?
Pittsburgh goes off on passing heinous acts under the table with a sweet name.
Yes. Another piece of this is the company that they're using, the architectural company they're using to make this plan. Hennington, Durham, and Richardson, HDR. They're the architecture firm known for building jails, surveilling activists, and partnering with American and Israel military. They made over $2 billion from military contracts and built over 275 jails. So they have been tasked with creating this community master plan. They have been selected to set up the community meetings. They have started to come around and they're going to make financial promises to community members. Going back to that capitalism piece, they're going to say, no, we'll have a listening session and then we'll pay you all to facilitate it. We'll pay you the facility. We'll get food to come there. We'll donate to your Little League. will donate to your football team. These things have already started to happen. So you're going to be contacted by HDR to say, no, the city of Pittsburgh hired us, you all, to host these listening sessions. And they're going to start to pull Black women consultants in on this stuff. So I wanted to point that out because I've been called. Like, I'm not doing that.
Right.
But I know who HDR is.
Right.
And know who they're involved with.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't. So I wanted to kind of point that out. I don't know how you move this thing.
Yeah.
And I also just wanted to add that this concept of local state violence is not just with cop cities, it's with ICE, it's with police.
Yeah, I think Theron said, everything you said, everything he was going to say, you've got it.
Okay. Because I keep hearing this, abolish ICE. You cannot have that conversation without saying abolish policing. You cannot separate it. So if we're going to be up in arms about state violence, about all state violence, look at our jail, look at our police, look at ICE. You got to abolish all of them. So a cop city will just fuel the further criminalization of Black people and further expand the carceral system. Also opens the door for more fascist state violence. So we're welcoming in, we're giving them a place to train to kill us. This is going to be in a Black neighborhood. There's going to be firing squads there. They're just going to be shooting left and right. Somebody gets killed. Oh, that's his friendly fire farm. It's a public safety training facility. We have to do this to keep your community safe. So none of these things are separate. They're all together. And I just wanted to point out the connections with Venezuela, with Cop City, what's going on in Pittsburgh, what's going on in McKeesport, what's going on everywhere with all of these connections. So Cop City, Pittsburgh, and what's happening in Venezuela are all part of the same imperialist machinery that fuels the genocide in Palestine, Haiti, Congo, and the occupation of Haiti by foreign forces, and expansion of AFRICOM across the African continent. I think that's it.
Okay.
You can scroll. Yeah, those are just the sources. So we'll make sure those either go in the chat or go out to you all.
Yeah, we're going to send them out after everyone's
Okay.
registered. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Bet. So, any comments or folks want to make in terms of one thing we were hoping to do in terms of just learning together is trying to make figure out connections, like, so if you see, just to think together. So we kind of have these things happening. Fawn's pointed out some connections. Just to see if folks have other thoughts about how you see these things relating.
I have a couple things.
Yeah.
I love, Fawn, how you mention imperialism and capitalism. I think that's so important to keep driving home with people here to understand that connection, that worldwide, the anti-imperialist struggle is something that we need to combat here on a daily basis, like things with Cop City, because imperialism, capitalism, Zionism, it all uses the same logic of racial supremacy, militarism, violence. And so, yeah, I really think that was great how you mentioned that on the slides. And I think that people need more education on all of that conversation. Secondly, I just wanted to talk about locally with our new mayor in the city. I feel like this type of thing could progress quickly. Recently, the new police chief I think he did a community thing. I don't know if anybody here was there. Were you there, Fawn? Or he did a question and answer. Yeah, and then they also had one where city council asked him questions. And I was curious if, I feel like, I don't know if we have any more opportunities for something like that. People really should be asking, are you training with Israel? Is the IDF coming here, or are you doing an exchange program over there? But just things to make the community aware. But yeah, thank you for all the information. That was great.
No, thank you for that. We definitely should be saying that when we're talking about this. And one of the things that we've been stressing is that we don't want to build at all. We don't want to build with amendments. We don't want it at all. Public safety doesn't just mean policing, right? So they could build facility to address the housing, and there's so many other things that they could do. This is a decision that they're making to do, because it's all connected to the bigger agenda of the U.S.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Darren's putting some resources in the chat, I think, too, which is great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
One thing I'll say too, this is a question, is I think it's important to make a connection, to the IDF. And I also wonder, even with the frame of, and I'll use it, so I don't know, I think it's good to have these various terms, and they all mean some slightly different things. Fascism, but these things are all from the 20th century. Police are modeled on really, patty rollers and things that were around keeping African people enslaved from the 18th century, you know what I mean, 19th century. And so I think sometimes I worry a little bit about that we lose some history, that Black people really enslavement of African people, and then the genocide of indigenous people here is actually, I think, in many ways, this is not an original thought. It's what Amy Césaire said, and thanks to Frames, who brought it, to one of our earlier study groups, is like really the model. And then and Hitler wanted to colonize Eastern Europe, and that was his idea. There was nowhere else to colonize, so he was going to colonize Eastern Europe. So just to add that I think but a question I guess I have is, if people don't feel like they're planning on doing a lot of resistance, if they feel like the problem is really us, they feel like they're not really going to be organizing, do they feel like, well, don't screw around then? Don't, like people responding to ICE, right? They're like, okay, yeah, you don't want to get shot by ICE? Don't get in their face. Like that, do we have to have even a stronger movement of people organizing so that they see that you're going to end up getting confronted with police when you even try to do the right thing? There's just that you will find yourself confronted because they are going to be between you and the issue that you're addressing. But if you're not addressing any issues, do you end up feeling like that's not going to be my problem? And that's a challenge that we have so I just have that as a question. Yeah.
Dr. Covenant.
Yeah. So one of the things that we need to do some more public education, because so that people don't get so suckered in by all this propaganda. So, for example, the police, people are bought into this idea, there's this crime, and there is crime. There's always crime. Yet the crime rate in America is much lower than it was in the 90s, okay? Much lower than it was in the late 80s and 90s. In the late 80s and 90s, the crime was tied to cocaine. Well, who brought the cocaine into the country? Our own government.
Yeah.
And if people who are not familiar with that, I can give you lots of sources and data, including from the government itself, which admitted it brought the cocaine in, and it brought it into our communities. So when the cocaine was gone, all that kind of crime went down, but it had nothing to do with the police. These police tactics have nothing to do with making the community safer. And we have to help people make the connection, so people say, oh, well, there's all these rapes. Police never check these rape kits. They have rape kits, I forget how many, that are from decades that have not been checked. Police don't really there's a lot of research showing how the presence of police does not prevent violent crime and does not bring it down. What brings crime down is people having jobs, people having ways to take care of their kids while they're working, people having their needs met. I could go on and on. People, mental health needs met. And this is what we have to help people understand, that they're ramping all this up not to make our community safe, but to control us so that we don't protest while all these super rich capitalists are making off with the goods.
Yeah. Frames, you want to go? We'll wrap up in a second. You want Frames, and then we'll go to Mr. Redwood. Yeah.
Yeah, this is cool.
Oh, good, cool, please.
I was gonna say I got the Courier from the 21st to 27th. Right on the front page, homicides in Pittsburgh, Allegheny County dropped to historic lows, lowest since '89.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then plus on top of that, when they rejected Gainey's budget, the two things that they mentioned was that they said the budget didn't account for was police overtime and public safety vehicles, which is, umbrella term for police vehicles, squad cars.
Mhm. Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Mr. Redwood?
Yeah, I think one interesting kind of question around Cop City, the Lincoln Limington community, like you were saying, I'm not sure where they're gonna stand around whether they want it or don't want it.
Mhm.
20 years ago, there was a proposal by Herman Mitchell and them to build 100 and some houses back there,
Mm-hmm.
and the community was against it.
Hmm.
Or people, some people in the
Some
community
people,
were
yeah,
against it,
yeah.
and they organized against it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what's gonna happen around Cop City, but the most impacted folks could be the folks in Lincoln Limington.
Oh, yeah.
And if they could be organized to oppose it or to modify it into housing or something else,
Mm-hmm.
that might be a way to proceed. But there were lots of community meetings, and there were lots of attempts at that time by Herman Mitchell, who was the developer. He used to be a police sergeant or something.
Mm-hmm.
And the EVP Mitchell residence is named for his but they reached out to community groups and tried to get
Mhm.
community groups on their side.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that's gonna happen with the Cop City thing too, where
Yeah.
this HDR, when they do this plan, they're gonna be like calling people and
Yeah.
promising people stuff and
Yeah.
like that, like they're probably promising they could use the football field up there,
Yep,
football
yep.
team, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it started happening
Yeah.
because people have called me. I guess that's a good thing with some of the propaganda that's been put out. Because they're like, Fawn, isn't this connected to, connected to the
Mhm.
Cop City?
Mhm.
So from what I'm hearing, it's two bags. It's either people who are for it because of the violence, and there's people who just don't know what's happening.
Mhm.
They have no idea that they're doing anything with the VA site. And I
Yeah.
think that kind of goes back to the point you were bringing up when people say, oh, well, just don't get in their face. Like, it's going to hit your door regardless. You can't nice your way out of police violence.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to get to you. So what I always say is history is a perfect example. Like,
Mhm.
it's coming to you regardless.
Mhm. You're right.
Like, your turn is getting there, but it's right there in the hood.
Yeah.
Like, Lincoln Limington is the hood, and
Yeah.
you're going to put a bunch of cops
Hmm.
smack dab in the hood for target practice.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I wonder about it too is that, would it help to say to folks, like, this is where the income spread is going. The reason why these are coming, why there's 69 or 80, is really around the income spread. Like, what you see is this is preventative medicine. Like, if you get deeper and deeper spreads, you might decide you are going to you might decide you're just going to cut up because you see no way out, right? So you're
Yeah.
just like, and so I think that to me is maybe another thing to try to help say, like, this is look at where the money is going. It's just only spreading like this. So why would you now, with crime going down, et cetera, quote unquote crime, would you need these things, right? And why would you why would they be appearing in like Black Democrat-led cities like Atlanta, et cetera, et cetera? There's got to be something here.
Yeah.
And even we'll have to see, but even just trying to raise the issues, I think will be good. It's going to be another place to have education struggle, and then go from there. Well, before we wrap, y'all have anything that you want to add, Fong, before we let folks know?
No.
Folks have anything else they want to share?
And these notes will be in our email address.
Yeah, we'll send those. Do y'all want the slides and that kind of stuff? We can send them out if folks want them. We'll send them. Okay, yeah. There was one person at least wants it, so we'll send it. We'll send it to Darren. Thanks, appreciate it. And Regina, sister Regina, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Cool. We appreciate folks coming out, and thanks to everybody who put in time to share their thoughts and to prepare something for us today. And this is the end of the week of action. Today's the last day. But I think it's an opportunity for us to think about other kinds of weeks of action, right? Like this is a strategy to raise the issue, right? But we could decide for weeks of action for other things, right? Mainly just to try to raise awareness. So we learn as we do it. Thanks everybody, and good night.
Thank you.
All right, peace
Thank
and
you.
blessings.
Excellent.
Peace.
Peace.
Thanks,
Mhm.
y'all.
Thank y'all. Peace.
All right, y'all.
Yeah,
Peace, peace.
good job. Excellent. Peace.